Thanks for joining me on Woman to Woman with Sarah. Last episode.
Take heed that you do not aim before men to be seen of them.
Wait a second. What did I just say?
Not aim.
Aims. That's not what that says there. That word is alms. But what does that mean? Isn't alms just charity?
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you shouldn't make all your aims before God, but that's not what that word says. It's what I love so much about the Bible. Every single time I read it, I come up with something new. I find something new. No matter how many times I look at a verse, there's always something new to learn. And in this case, I need to learn more about the word alms. So, what exactly are alms? Alms is defined by the Britannica.com, Encyclopedia Britannica online, as money or charity given to the poor, specifically the poor. And charity is defined separately by the same book as love with action or feelings of attitude or love for God. So charity is more about how you feel and act in that feeling, specifically in love for God. Whereas alms is an action that you can take. So alms is one of the ways we can express charity, specifically by giving money to the poor. So let's look at the word. It comes from an Old English word, almes, which is Greek, meaning pity or mercy. And it's used 9 times in the King James Version of the New Testament throughout 5 different chapters. We looked at one of them, Matthew 6, 1 through 4, which is that it's basically talking about how alms shouldn't be used to show off. In other words, do it in the right spirit. Do it because you love God and you want to bless somebody in His name. So it goes on, Luke 11:40 through 42, as well as 12 and 32 talk about alms. In 11, he rebukes the Pharisees for neglecting justice and the love of God. What does alms have to do with justice? Well, if you go back into the Old Testament, in Amos 5:11 through 12 and 5:24, Amos he's a shepherd and a farmer, and he is led as a prophet to rebuke Israel. He says, you've grown so content in your ways, and you've got so much money, but you got it because you're doing things wrong, just like your neighbors are. You've forsaken me, you set up idols, you're tolerating those idols being in your home, you are using deceit, specifically in the case of alms, to make money, and you're forsaking the poor. This is wrong. This is unjust. It's not right. And he cursed Israel, and they fell sometime later to Assyria as a result of those choices. In fact, there was 15 times in the Old Testament. It doesn't specifically say the word alms, because as I mentioned, we get the word alms from the Greek word almes. In Hebrew, they talk instead about tzedakah. Tzedakah means justice and righteousness when used with mishpat. Mishpat, spelled Mishpatt. I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, but mishpat. So justice and righteousness, they're kind of tied together, and it means doing good. Basically, God sees poverty as an injustice. It's part of the fall. It's not something that we're meant to have to go through, but it's something that we have to go through now as a result of the original sin and just the fall of man and the sin that exists now. But when you have money, when you have the means, you're expected to share, to give that back to the poor, and to set those scales kind of right. See, every time a society hits where there's a great rift between low income and high income, it's not long before everything falls apart. So basically, God says that giving to the poor helps reestablish the order and ultimately produces justice. And in these 19 books, which I'm going to put up here for you, he is talking about all the ways that this affects people. If you read the Apocrypha and you want to study outside of the book, the holy canonized text, there is Tobit 12:9 and 4:7 talks about how you receive favor from God, and Ecclesiastes, sometimes referred to as Sirach, also discusses it. So those are just outside of the Bible. But other than that, alms and how it applies to our life today. So let's think about when we give alms. There's some obvious examples of alms. If you see a beggar on the corner, a panhandler, and he's got a sign, need help, and you give him $1, or maybe you swing by McDonald's and you pick up a cheeseburger meal and you just bring it to him and you give that to him, that's obviously alms. If you are tithing and giving to the church, or you give money to another organization that you know is going to turn around and use that money to help the poor, that is alms. So what about a birthday gift? Would a birthday gift be alms? No, because you're not giving it to the poor. You may be doing it out of love, but it's not necessarily something that you're giving to relieve pain and suffering. So what exactly qualifies as poor? See, Jesus gives a parable in Luke 10:25-37. And in here, this is the story of the Good Samaritan. Many of you are already familiar with the story. There's a man. It doesn't talk about what his financial situation's like. All it says is he's robbed on the road, he's beaten, and he's left for dead. And multiple people that were his own people passed by him and kept going. But a Samaritan, who were technically the enemies of his particular people, a Samaritan came along, put him up and gave him room and board, made sure he was cared for, and even came back and checked on him. That, even though that man wasn't necessarily described as financially impoverished, like, today he probably would have had a credit card or something and maybe been able to ring him up and say, hey, my card was stolen and all that. But at the time, this man was in need. And I think that is the defining trait of what is poor. You can be poor in spirit, you can be financially poor, or you can just be poor of resources. Maybe you don't have food, maybe you need clothes, maybe you just need somebody to be there with you. So if you are giving something tangible to somebody in need, then that would be considered alms. So I'd like to wrap it up here with a question for you. I want you to think about this for a second. Here's the scenario. You've got new neighbors. They move in up the road. Now, we all know moving can be beyond a hassle. You've got so much on your plate that sometimes you don't have time to stop and prepare a meal, let alone something nice for your family like a pie or a cake. So you see these neighbors and you know that they probably could really use some help right now in some basic things like that. So you decide to fix them a cake or fix them a pie or make them a meal and bring it by. So here's my question to you. Would that be considered alms? Good question, huh? So, personally, I think that if you do it out of love, you want to bless them in the name of Jesus Christ. That puts your heart in the right place. You recognize a need that they may or probably not able or to easily fulfill at this time. And you do an act and give them something tangible that they can use to make their world better. I think, in my opinion, it qualifies as alms. But I want to know what you think. Do you agree with me or not? Let me know. Comments right there. Subscribe if you haven't. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Woman to Woman, all about alms.